In the heart of the bustling hospital room, a revelation unfolds with the weight of a sledgehammer. John Harrison, the enigmatic figure who had mystified and divided the staff, stands amidst their palpable tension, poised to unveil a truth that threatens to reshape their world. The room holds its breath as he begins to speak, his calm demeanor stark against the storm of emotions surging within his audience. What John reveals next sends ripples of shock and awe cascading through the crowd, a secret so profound it challenges their perceptions and promises to alter the future of their hallowed halls. But what happened next will shock even those who thought they'd seen everything. But first, let's go back to the beginning. The pulsating buzz of the emergency room, a constant undulating sea of urgency and controlled chaos, came to an abrupt halt the moment John Harrison entered its domain. The juxtaposition was jarring. Amidst the cacophony of hurried footsteps, hushed tones of medical jargon, and the soft murmur of distressed patients, John stood like an anomaly, a paragon of elegance, encased in a tailored suit that seemed to repel the very aura of illness from clinging to its pristine fabric. His presence was arresting, not because he physically commanded it, but due to the peculiar aura he emitted. He walked with a measured grace, every step calculated, his expression betraying none of the agony he purported to suffer from. In stark contrast to the disheveled patients flooding the space in various states of distress, his features remained immaculately composed. Yet, beneath that carefully cultivated facade lay an inscrutable narrative, like pages of a history book left intentionally unturned. The staff exchanged discreet glances, eyebrows subtly arched in collective speculation, their medical training battling with natural human curiosity. John's insistence on an overnight stay for a vague and elusive ailment sparked an undercurrent of skepticism among the nurses, each trained to detect the subtlest of maladies, yet stymied by this man's enigma. Whispers of doubt threaded through the bustling ward, each word hanging heavy with suspicion. Was he genuine, a victim of some rare affliction beyond their immediate grasp? Or was he playing a role, a cunning masquerade with an unspoken motive? But therein lay a compelling paradox. Even as doubt cast its pervasive shadow, a dawning fascination began to seed itself amongst the medical practitioners. There was something undeniably mesmerizing about John, his serenity amidst turmoil, his quiet strength that seemed impervious to the frenetic hospital dance. It was this dichotomy, the peaceful poise and the persistent plea for attention, that intrigued the doctors and nurses alike. While routine procedures resumed, their movements became increasingly perfunctory, their thoughts irresistibly orbiting around this mystery man whose calm disposition and polished veneer were so at odds with the typical tableau of the emergency room. They scrutinized his every action, slicing through layers of purported affliction with experienced eyes, searching for truth. As day turned to night, the electric anticipation hardly waned, an unspoken understanding lacing the air. Tomorrow might unravel the threads of this enigma, but tonight, John Harrison remained the focal point of their curious solitude. The words wealth and ruse flickered like darts in their minds, silently begging for resolution that only time, or perhaps an unguarded moment of confession from John himself, could provide. The sterile corridors of the hospital hummed with a heightened sense of intrigue, a palpable undercurrent of suspense threading through the daily rhythms of medical care. Whispers circulated like autumn leaves caught in a sudden gust. The source of this swell of curiosity was none other than John Harrison, whose enigmatic presence continued to stir both the imagination and scrutiny of the staff. Eavesdropping, though never overtly condoned, became a clandestine sport among the nurses, who lingered just a fraction longer near the room where John resided, his sanctum of secrecy. It was on one such occasion that a few tuned ears caught fragments of John's conversation over the phone, spoken in a conspiratorial whisper. The words, "Help arriving soon," slipped through the air like a coded message, kindling flames of speculation into a full blaze. The staff's initial wariness, sharpened by their training to question and deduce, evolved into a fractious divide. A generational rift emerged, subtly drawing lines between veteran staff members and their younger counterparts. The seasoned nurses and doctors, armed with wisdom etched in the fine lines of their faces and tempered by years of experience, approached the mystery with scrutiny tempered by patience. They argued for caution, emphasizing the value of empathy and the possibility that John's intentions harbored a benevolent undercurrent yet to be revealed. Conversely, the younger cohort, enthusiastic and driven by a keen sense of justice and curiosity, saw potential subterfuge in the shadows cast by John's polished veneer. To them, the thrill of unmasking a possible con man resonated as a challenge, a narrative ripe for resolution, a puzzle demanding completion. Yet, even as theories bloomed like unbidden weeds, the dichotomy of John's actions offered no easy answers. For every suspicion of deceit, there lay a counterpoint: his unguarded kindness towards other patients. John's gentle words of encouragement, the unobtrusive way he engaged with those suffering around him, and the anonymous little notes of gratitude left for the staff spoke to a deep well of generosity. In quiet moments, when the whirlwind of hospital life momentarily subsided, some staff members found themselves touched by this unexpected magnanimity. Their initial resolve softened, if not entirely eroded. Instead, they allowed themselves to entertain the unlikely hope that his mystery shrouded a heart responding to unseen wounds and unspoken needs. Ultimately, curiosity demanded satisfaction, thrusting the opposing forces towards a collective confrontation. The air bristled with unspoken demands as John found himself encircled by his caretakers, their expressions a mosaic of curiosity and resolve. Words hung suspended like chimes waiting for a breeze as they asked the question that had lingered, unsaid yet omnipresent. They implored John to strip away the layers of mystery and lay bare the truth of his presence among them, a truth they were ready, or perhaps destined, to finally unravel. In the hushed room, tension reached a near-tangible peak as a dozen eyes fixed intently on John Harrison, awaiting an explanation that threatened to either confirm suspicions or transform judgments. The starkly lit hospital room became a sort of informal tribunal, with John seated at its center, a protagonist unveiled at last, stripped of all guile. John, for a fleeting moment, looked weary, a millisecond-long flicker of vulnerability that humanized him before he imbued his voice with the strength of conviction. "I owe you the truth," he began, his tone resonant with sincerity, a stark contrast to the confusion that had surrounded him. The staff, a semicircle of medical professionals representing a spectrum of skepticism, felt the gravity of the moment pull them into collective attention. "I'm John Harrison," he continued, "and yes, I am indeed who you think I might be, a man of means, but more critically, a man searching for places where such means can transform lives." The weight of his words settled heavily over the gathered staff. Incensed murmurings flickered like sparks, threatening to ignite a powder keg of indignation. The room seemed split by an invisible line, some clenched fists at their sides, grappling with a sense of betrayal towards this stranger who had walked among them wearing what they now viewed as a mask. "You turned us into unwitting participants in your experiment," an indignant voice challenged from the periphery. John lifted his hands in a gesture of conciliation, his eyes fiercely earnest. "Experiment, no," he rebutted gently. "Opportunity, yes. A chance to understand where those barriers are, barriers that block help from reaching the very veins meant to carry life. I didn't mean to deceive, but to witness authenticity, a spark I couldn't glean from polished reports or glossy brochures." His words, though conciliatory, carried an edge that cut through the room's static charge. Conversations of overwork, underfunding, and systemic failings hung like specters, haunting these halls long before John's arrival. His acknowledgement of these struggles steered the tide from confrontation to shared truth. "I wanted to experience it firsthand to better target assistance," he confessed, "because I've seen too many places overlooked due to spreadsheets and balance sheets." His candor began to slowly quell the flames of anger. Several in the room, scarred by battles for resources that often went unseen and unvalued, began to feel a grudging understanding. They saw not a deceiver, but an ally with unconventional tools, a man seeking partnership with those who daily navigated the trenches of healthcare, touching lives at their rawest. The initial flash of anger receded like an ebbing tide, leaving behind a shore altered by currents of new understanding. In that brief silence that followed, the staff began to realize that perhaps John's methods, though unorthodox, had indeed peeled back layers of obfuscation, uncovering needs that oftentimes cries for support left unspoken. As the afternoon sun began its descent, casting the hospital in a warm, amber glow, the staff congregated in the main lobby, drawn together by a mixture of curiosity and residual tension. John Harrison, now an open book rather than an enigma, stood before them with a poised demeanor that bespoke sincerity and purpose. His earlier revelations had opened a dialogue, and now it was time for the final chapter in the narrative he had woven into their lives. With a measured composure that juxtaposed the earlier turbulence, John began to speak. "Throughout my time here, I've observed not just the tireless dedication each of you embodies, but also the silent struggles you've contended with as you work to turn scarcity into care." His voice resonated with a deep-seated respect, each word an acknowledgement of their unseen battles. As the room held its collective breath, John continued, "It's for this reason that I've decided to make a gift to this hospital." John paused, allowing the anticipation to build, before revealing the magnitude of his donation, a sum so substantial it promised to be transformative. The reaction was immediate and profound, a collective exhalation of disbelief and gratitude transforming into a wave of elation that rippled through the room. Tears of relief sprang to eyes that had long been acquainted with struggle, and smiles broke through faces accustomed to professional stoicism. In that moment, the true weight of their challenges seemed to lift, even if only partially, replaced by the buoyant promise of better days. Relief, sweet and palpable, washed over them, bringing with it the recognition that their indefatigable efforts had not gone unnoticed nor unrewarded. It was a validation they seldom received, affirming not only the importance of their work, but their dignity and worth. Amidst subtle murmurs of awe and heartfelt thanks, there was a dawning realization. John's unexpected gesture was more than an act of philanthropy. It was a bridge, one he had built through empathy and genuine comprehension, spanning the chasm between need and affluence. His donation would not simply fill coffers, but would empower meaningful change, underscoring the potential for wealth to harmonize with humane understanding to engender progress. As the recognition of this cathartic resolution settled in, admiration for John swelled, transcending the initial gratitude for his gift. He had not only injected hope into the veins of their hospital, but had illuminated broader societal disparities, bringing them to the fore with both clarity and compassion. John had turned observation into opportunity, albeit unconventionally, laying bare the truth of disparity with humility and a call to action. With renewed spirits, the staff found themselves reflecting on their roles, invigorated by a sense of possibility. John's actions had underscored an essential truth, that the threads of change are often spun from unexpected places, woven by those who dare to look beyond the surface and act with intention and heart. In the end, their voices echoed in concert, expressing collective admiration for John Harrison, not merely for the legacy of his gift, but for having the courage to see them, truly see them, in the tapestry of a world too often blinded by blindness and neglect.